Everybody, welcome back. X's and Knowles position preview presented by the venerable, the one-of-a-kind Knowles 24/7. I am Trey Rowland, and I am here with Coach Adam Brown, Kevin Little, and today we're going to be talking about a unit been in the news a lot lately. Some positive, some negative. NCAA, gross. But a position preview that has been clamored for by the masses and one that I am personally excited to get into. Today, we're going to be talking about FSU's defensive line, a unit that when healthy last year I thought was very good to almost great, and one that has been bolstered by we always talk about King of the Spring, King of July, the Earl of August. I don't know. Somebody come up with a better like divination type of like royalty name, but it's Braden Fiske, dude. Because Braden Fiske, the praise has been heaped on and on and on and on. So I want to see what all the fuss is about. Kev, let's get right to the film. I want to see this man at Western Michigan. He lined up inside. He lined up outside. He was a wrecking crew, high motor, energy guy, gritty. I can't wait to see what all the fuss is about. So who are they playing here, and where's Braden at?
So Fiske is he's going to be this guy here. He's number 55. So he's your defensive tackle. We have two games, one where he primarily plays inside defensive tackle, and they like to flex him out to defensive ends whenever they played, bigger name opponents, Michigan State and Pitt. So we'll look at a little bit of the Pitt game here in a second. But Fiske, I've gotten to see in practice a few times. The dude's motor is insane. Okay. Yeah, this was not curated. This was just the first play of the game against Toledo.
Oh my God. Look at that swim move, looking like Jason Lezak out there. Shout out USA Relay Team. My goodness, look at this, Adam. You're salivating, aren't you, big guy?
He's pretty juicy. He's pretty exciting.
Why did you have to use that adjective?
Hey, big man likes other big men that can eat.
This is what you see consistently in practice. Is FSU, even in practice, double teams him without a shadow of a doubt. So you see they're going to kind of double team him here. The center takes him mostly, but he just never stops. His feet never stop moving.
He's constant motion, constant energy. A dude that, I think his greatest attribute is just his hustle and his effort and his determination. He's got an ability to play. I was looking, you guys were talking about that first play. I was looking at something that Brendan had wrote when he wrote a little write-up on Braden Fiske. Fiske lined up 182 snaps in the A gap, 300 snaps in the B gap, 41 snaps over top of the tackle, and then 213 snaps outside of the tackle. So,
wow.
Western Michigan used him everywhere. I think Florida State is going to intend to use him everywhere. It just makes sense. You're trying to find matchups for this dude to go get one-on-ones, because when he gets a one-on-one, he's going to win.
Kev, physically, I could just tell from the practice photos, he is bulked up significantly, even from this type of film. What does he look like in person?
He's a big dude, but to be honest, physically, his size isn't what really stands out. He's standing next to, Darrell Jackson and Fabien Lovett, who are all 300 plus guys, but then you see this 300 plus guy move like this. It's his movement at his size that really kind of sets him apart. But I will say, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I think that occasionally, and I don't think this is a huge issue, but I do think if you're going to kind of critique his game a little bit, sometimes he is over aggressive trying to win, and it can actually push him out of the play. So you see, this is a short pass. Toledo's just getting rid of the ball fast, so he doesn't really have a chance of getting to the sack here, but you can see that he almost motors himself out of this play. Like, it's easy for the guard to just kind of pick him up and kind of push him away and kind of keep him out of harm's way.
It looks like he tries to go for a swim move there, and then the guard gets into him. So he doesn't win. He doesn't win with his hands initially, and the guard's able to get into him and kind of win that rep.
It kind of reminds me of Jared Verse's film from last year at some points. Just very athletic, but is doing so much that sometimes he's creating running lanes for that offense. Now, I think a byproduct of that could be is he is the guy on this Western Michigan defense. Yeah. So he is trying to do it all himself. I think he's going to play a little bit more within himself, surrounded by the type of talent that we're going to talk about later in the video.
Yeah, it'll just be a balance of knowing when to penetrate and when to just soak up a double team.
I don't think soaking up a double team's in his game.
Yeah, I think.
I don't think that's who he is. That's not his nature.
I mean, he kind of does it here, but you see, he's just always fighting, right? He's
Mhm.
he takes on this double team, but this is him taking on a double team, quote unquote. He's just fighting through it consistently without giving up leverage.
Yeah, he's works against pressure. I mean, he's doing a decent job there. He's not letting it get too wide on him. I mean, they've bulked him up to over 300 pounds. I think that's significant. They're wanting him to become more of an anchor against the run game, but it sure as hell doesn't look like he's given up any of that athleticism. And you see all the videos of him racing Norvell, who's a former wide receiver.
I like his hands, Adam. He's very good, very violent punch, very active with it. Like there's just a lot
I
of.
wonder what his arm length is. Looks like sometimes he doesn't win just because guys are longer than him.
Oh man, that's quick, dude. Oh my god, that is
Well,
speed.
That's not fair.
Yeah, I don't think you want to not block him. So here he is at the 3 tech. And I think they mess up their pass pro here, and this is why you don't want to mess up your pass pro.
Oh, man. Look at him close, man. He's a gap shooter. He kind of reminds me of like some of those DTs that Florida State has played in the past at places like Wake and like maybe like NC State. Those guys that really disrupt your offense by shooting. Like he fires through a gap, man. Like that. What a nightmare to have to block with that type of effort that he has all game. Look at him get out there on the
We haven't seen a ton of stunts from Florida State's D-line under Adam Fuller. There's been some, not a ton. It looks like that's a strength for him. So I wonder if that.
Here he is chasing a running back.
You see his speed here. I wonder if that lends to them maybe working some more D-line stunts to, again, try to get matchups and try to get one-on-ones for their pass rushers. Create negative plays.
Yeah, and this is what you see out of him. Just like
it's just constant effort.
Yep, it's play after play. He's just you can watch him, and he's going to be pushing someone back. He's going to be, just he stunts inside, gets on a smaller center, and just works him backwards and gets into that pocket.
Yeah, they've got him on a little pinch concept there, it looks like, and he takes on the center.
Yeah.
He dog whips the center.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, buddy. Yeah, center. I don't like seeing centers get abused like that. Adam, obviously, we hate the NCAA for many obvious reasons. This time it's for Darrell Jackson. Who do you think is going to be the best interior tag team member for the Braden Fiske wrecking crew? Obviously, talent-wise, it's probably going to be Fabien Lovett, but who's like a combination that intrigues you adding Braden Fiske to that mix as far as an interior duo?
I think on pass rushing downs, it's Dennis Briggs or Malcolm Ray. So I think those are two pass rushing specialist types, or even Daniel Lyons, who's a dude that presents a ton of length and explosion. I don't know how much we'll see from him this year. Again, just because they've got so many veterans, but losing Darrell Jackson, somebody's going to need to step into those roles. But I mean, I think Malcolm Ray is a dude that's long forgotten about by this fan base and by people that talk about this team. And that's a guy who's had productive snaps as a pass rusher. He's been hurt a lot. He's had shoulder injuries. But if his shoulder's healthy, I mean, those two next to each other working stunts and games inside could be fun. Dennis Briggs, it sounds like, if all reports out of practices are that he's kind of back to what he was 2 years ago before he got the cheap shot against Louisville. FYF Louisville for that. But so I mean, if he's back to what he was 2 years ago on a team with Jermaine Johnson and Keir Thomas, he was maybe the best natural pass rusher. So if he's back to close to that, like he and Fiske next to one another on third down, that could be pretty nasty.
And we're going to talk about passing sets and things like that because we want to look at Braden Fiske lined up on the outside. I have a question because I think that Florida State's the weakness was when Fabien Lovett was hurt. It was an entirely different defensive line. That kid is integral. Keeping him healthy, this added depth is going to do that. But Florida State, particularly when Lovett was hurt, was exposed. I felt not so much in the passing game, but I feel like they got gashed a lot of the time, especially on some of those like teams like Florida, things of that nature, where they did a lot of heavy double teams. Kevin, are you still worried about Florida State's potential run defense on the interior, even with these new additions? And who's kind of your dream 3rd and 1 interior duo? Who do you think those guys that Florida State's going to rely on are going to be?
Yeah, well, my answer is Darrell Jackson. There might not be a higher person in the country on that kid. I think the world of his potential, but unfortunately, you won't get to see that. Really, what you're looking for is someone with length that can kind of control that. Ideally, someone like Lyons or Tafase would be ready to step into that position. I think those are really the two guys that have that elite length, kind of like a Darrell Jackson, that could do that. They just aren't where he is. So you don't know if they can step up and kind of be that presence. You're going to need Fabien Lovett for those situations. He's a really big body. I think outside of that, that's where my big question is okay. You need to be able to win and stop the run with your defensive line the way that they want to play their secondary. You need your defensive line to be able to dominate. And I think, with Fabien Lovett, maybe on a pitch count, you have Braden Fiske, who's obviously a very talented player, but who's going to be the guys that you can kind of put in there that aren't going to lose a double team to a Florida or to, an LSU that we saw happen last year? And losing Darrell Jackson may potentially be a problem there.
I think the natural name everybody's going to immediately bring up is Josh Farmer. And I think that it's an interesting conversation to have, because I think that we're lower on Josh Farmer than a lot of other folks are. I know when we did the preseason rankings, the three of us had him lower than Brendan and Dane and Zach and Chris did. And I know a lot of people speak very highly of Josh's game, and we haven't seen that play out yet on the football field itself, but I think this is his opportunity now with Darrell Jackson not being available for this year. It's Josh's opportunity to step in and take those snaps and those reps and be that force that we thought that Darrell Jackson was going to be. I think there's a lot of people that will tell you that he can. I don't know if he's got the pass rush upside, but maybe he doesn't need to. Maybe he's a guy that you can plug in there and he can eat double teams like Kev was just talking about, and eat up blocks and keep linebackers clean on those 3rd and shorts and those predictable run downs. So I'm curious to see where he fits in there. I mean, he's a guy you got to talk about because he's a guy that he kind of steps into that spot with Jackson going down. You're not going to ask a Malcolm Ray to play a lot of run snaps this year, I would hope, with a lot of these other bodies. So a pairing of a Fiske, a Josh Farmer, maybe even some 5-down looks of Farmer, Lovett, and Fiske is interesting. Stopping the run. It's just what kind of ceiling, and we kind of talked about with the O-line, what kind of ceiling can Josh Farmer get to this year? He doesn't have a lot of snaps. He's got some. Obviously, he played last year. A
lot of potential, though. Yeah,
a lot of potential. So I'm curious to see what he gets to this year as a player.
I tell you what, and there's a couple ways to limit the effectiveness of the double teams. You can soak it up and kind of be stout and stand your ground, or you could split the double team like we just saw a whole film of Braden Fiske doing and really disrupting a lot of that stuff. So a Farmer Fiske pairing is very interesting to me. I do think the loss of Darrell Jackson, it does hurt you on those obvious running downs. Yeah. It would be nice to have that, especially a guy that can take up a lot of attention. But Kev, you saw Josh Farmer. You've seen him spring. You've seen him summer. I mean, what do you see at him? Do you think he's ready to take advantage of the opportunity of his former high school teammate not being able to play? Because it is an opportunity, so he's going to get more playing time because of it. You think he's ready?
Yeah, I mean, I think that he'll be there. He's clearly a very talented kid. He's 300 plus. I think he's got a decent motor. He's a pretty athletic kid for his size. I think you're kind of missing that length that allows you to kind of be that guy that's a true just like wedge in the inside. But I mean, there are plenty of 6'3", shorter armed, 300+ pound defensive linemen that are very successful, and I think that there's a lot to like about Farmer's game. I think that he's going to be a very solid defensive lineman. I'm looking at his stats here. We say that he didn't get a lot of snaps last year, but I mean, he got more snaps or as many snaps as Patrick Payton, essentially.
Interesting. It doesn't feel like that.
Right. So he got some run, and I think he's experienced. I think he's a guy that they trust. I mean, PFF seems to like him pretty well. So maybe we're just not remembering him. There's a few snaps I can think of in like the Clemson game where he does a good job of redirecting and making a play. I think that he's fairly active. I think that he doesn't have just the huge upside that someone like Darrell Jackson has, but I don't think that should discount us from thinking that he's going to be a guy that is one heck of a second string defensive tackle.
No, and I tell you what, man, one thing that kind of shows you the value, at least on the projection that a lot of people have on him. In the offseason, it was a battle just to keep him on the team, man. Other programs were gunning for him, and he was prioritized a lot in the player retention game. And I think that tells a story, because that's other coaches and our staff value, like, as a quantitative measure of his value. And he was valued very heavily. Let's kind of transition to the edge and the pass rush game of this. I want to see Braden Fiske on the outside. I think Adam Fuller can do a lot of interesting things up front with his defense. Finally, a lot of that creativity that he had as the Memphis defensive coordinator in 2019. I can't wait to see him get back to that. All those interesting pre and post snap looks, changing the pictures. A lot of people like to say he was a sneaky son of a gun. I like to see him get back. Let's see what Braden Fiske looks on the outside. Then we can naturally transition to talk about Florida State's edges.
Yeah, so this will be nice because we'll get to see Braden Fiske against Power 5 competition here. So this is against Pitt. He's going to play mostly end. So here he is playing defensive end out here. I don't know why they did this in particular, but
they must have wanted to get somebody that could set an edge, I would guess.
How do you think he did there?
That last play, yeah, he kind of lost the rep.
The run's inside of him. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, the edge is there, double them, and then, there's a big gap inside of them.
Let's see.
That's one of those ones I don't expect him to make that play.
So it seems like they're kind of running that direction, little outside zone. It's kind of away from him. Let's see.
Good violent hands, gets him off.
I like that rep. I like I like the strike and then holding his ground. It's just that the guys to the right of him aren't really holding up their end of the bargain.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard when the defensive tackle kind of is getting pushed into you.
Yeah, he's not an end. Like, that's not what he is. That's not who he is. He's going to struggle with the length of some of these tackles. If he's playing end, it's because you're working some stunts in some games with him, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it makes more sense to have him at end as in a run situation than as a pass
inside and he gets stuck.
Yeah. Kind of gets double teamed there.
Yep. And then gets a guard on him also, like you're wrapping around.
The linebacker
or the center
across. Yeah, so this is where, like, he's being played in an atypical position against, a fairly decent offensive line in Pitt. So here, good beginning of a rep there.
Yeah, they're starting to move him now. They're getting him down inside instead of just letting him be stagnant out on the edge.
One of those games that you were talking about, Adam, watch him loop in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see the fight. He's always moving. He's always grinding. I think this is one of those things where him being next to Jared Verse are going to make both of them look better, Not that he doesn't look great here, but, he's getting pretty consistently double teamed, and it's just really hard. Here's a passing situation with him on the outside. So you'll probably get to see him pass rush at the top.
Gets off pretty darn good, and he's right in his
Yeah, that
face.
first step is really good.
He just doesn't have the athleticism to be able to dip and get around that. Like a Jared Versaire blows by that tackle. He's able to kind of dip his shoulder and get around it.
Right, and that's the difference between being 315 and being 260 pounds. But does a good job fighting. Here's another passing situation.
He's just going to present them with a lot of opportunities to be creative on their front and be more diverse than what they've essentially just lined up in a 4-man look every game, same spot every week the last few years. And guys like this present you the opportunities to not do that all the time. I mean, imagine on a third down, putting him out at end and putting Jared Verse in at 3-tech.
Oh God, the guard craps their pants, dude. What do you do then, right?
And you're looping those guys around each other. I mean,
right.
You could just start doing stuff with them.
What if you have Fiske out a little bit wide and kind of soak up the tackle, and then you let a kid like Pat Payton run right through and get a free alley? I'm with you, man. There's some bring a blitz on the inside with the linebackers. You can do some zone blitz stuff. Like he's athletic enough. I don't know. There's a lot of possibilities. I think it's just promising to even see that he can do this competently on a defense that's not talented against a team that's much more talented than the guys he's playing with, and he's holding his own.
Yeah, he did a nice job anchoring there. Basically took on 3 guys, and
my God, he took on half the offensive line by himself.
Yeah, I mean it's just toughness and want to.
Yeah, I mean I think that he improves every aspect of your defensive line. Having him on the roster, I mean, just changes things. He's a game changer on the defensive line, in my opinion.
I was talking to somebody the other day.
It's a good rep, man.
Yeah, it is.
And he was telling me that Fiske essentially had no stats against P5 competition. Like his numbers against P5 weren't anything to go crazy about. And my response was, I mean, look what he's surrounded by. Defensive line, it's pretty easy. Okay, we're going to triple this guy or double this guy or run away from him, like whatever. It's easy to kind of get away from him and then say, oh, well, he had no stats. Like I think you can see the impact he has on a football game just from watching the little bit of film that we watched him. Look at that play right there,
dude. Man,
I mean, come on.
Well,
that's running down an outside zone.
I'm with you too, Adam. Look at the guy. Look at his other defensive end. They obviously asked him to play on the outside for this game because they're afraid they were going to get gashed by off tackle and outside zone and all that other crap. So hey, we'll put our best player outside, even though he's kind of naturally out of position. Just help us out and look what he's doing.
This is if this guy were to be wearing Clemson colors and you were to see him do this, you would be talking about him being a first round pick.
Shit, how many times did Brian Bresee do that last year, right? Like, that's a very impressive play. I'm with you, dude. You put a little dumb tiger paw on the side of the helmet, and it's like, oh, that's part of the highlight package. That is, he's a very athletic kid.
He is.
I mean, you just see him just navigating it. Here he is. The play goes away from him, navigates that block, gets there. If this breaks, he's there. Reads
it nicely, too. He's not chasing ghosts out to the wide receiver. He reads his play.
Yeah, anybody that criticizes Braden Fiske hasn't really gotten to watch him play that much because the dude's a really good ball player. You just don't see this kind of movement skill on a 300-pound guy.
No, and he's unrelenting, man. There's no noticeable slowdown. It's the same effort. That is a menace, dude. That's a menace to deal with, especially when you're lining him up all over the place in conjunction with his stablemates, man. Like he'll chase you down on the backside. He'll loop in for the stun. He'll chase, like it's impressive. I like watching him play, man. It's a football player. I like it. It's a football player.
Oh.
Yeah, kind of bit on that one. That's okay, though.
Well, that's not technically not well. He's got to contain that quarterback.
Right,
yeah,
right.
He's got the quarterback. This guy, I think, has.
I doubt they've got him covering the
wide receiver out in the flat.
Hey, no, it's just Braden. You do everything on the left. That's you. That's your position today. It's left everything.
Yeah. Why is Pitt playing at Western Michigan? What the hell are we doing up there?
Narduzzi just wants the ball. He doesn't care where it is.
All right, I think we've seen enough
We
to
get
get
the
an
idea.
idea of kind of Braden
Yeah,
Fiske.
we get a
When he
good
might
sense.
play defensive end, probably not terribly often, but I think you could see him there. Like, say you're playing a team, like I was just saying, and none of these younger defensive linemen step up on the inside. Well, now you can give them a little bit of help by putting a 300-pound defensive tackle next to him, or defensive end next to him, and you kind of bolster a line of scrimmage.
I like the stunt game with like a Jared Verse, like Adam said, because Verse is stronger than you probably think until you lock up with him, and Fiske is a lot faster than you think when you lock up with him. Man, you combine those two, it's nasty. So and why we're looking at a lot of the film of the newcomers is because we know what Florida State has with the guys returning. Jared Verse, stud, first round guy in every single mock draft, really, really high, only getting better as we've seen in spring. Patrick Payton, preternaturally, I think, gifted in the pass rush game. He's just got like an innate skill to get around people in a manner that's surprising. This last year when you saw kind of his frame, he's put on weight. He's only gotten better. Those guys are lock solid studs. We know exactly what we're getting from them. Wanted to focus on a newcomer. We want to talk about Gilbert Edmond, one of the most important additions of this offseason. A lot because of the talent of the potential. A lot of it is because of the depth of that room was really kind of scaring people. Kev, before we started looking at Gilbert's game, what have you seen from him? Have you been impressed? Do you feel more comfortable in the edge room than maybe you did like 3 or 4 months ago?
Yeah, I don't think the level of any of these defensive line positions have dropped off. I think they've gotten better. I think you feel more comfortable with your 4s and 5s than you did last season. And I mean, in the case of the defensive tackles, Braden Fiske might be the best defensive tackle we've had in a minute, to be honest with you. I think can be a really good player for you. Gilbert Edmond on the outside, I think you feel more confident with him than you did than you see in the spring. I think that first step's gotten a little bit better. I think he's feeling a little bit more confident in the system and in the game. I think he's a guy that, played a fair amount of SEC snaps and, was pretty okay in the SEC throughout a season. And so if he's the first guy coming off the bench, he'll see a lot of reps. And I think that he's someone that you need to just be good enough. And I think he certainly is. I mean, he got a few sacks last year. I think he's going to be a little bit better of a player this year than he was last year. Another year of strength of development.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that he's going to succeed. I think that they're going to be able to kind of find ways for him to get one-on-ones and get good matchups.
And he was a big-time development piece coming out of high school. Florida State kind of dabbled with recruiting him. So he has, like you said, you never know with these type of projections as far as how kids progress. It could be he could take another big leap this year. All the reports have been positive. Adam, when they took Edmond, did you like that take compared to some of the edges that were in the transfer portal? Are you feeling more or less confident about it as we kind of get into the film?
I did like the take. He was a guy that I kind of planted my flag on and was hopeful that they would go after, and they ultimately did and landed him. And a lot of that came from the Clemson game at the end of the year. He was very active, chasing stuff down, playing the quarterback read game. They were running DJ a lot at the end of the season. He was playing it very effectively, kind of feathering and doing some athletic stuff that you wanted to see. His best football's in front of him. I mean, I think he's still a developmental piece. He's a guy that his best football, for this year, he's probably going to be playing his best snaps towards the end of the season, not maybe early.
Right.
But all reports are positive out of camp that I think the consistency is something you're going to see from game to game and from rep to reps. Maybe not going to be there for him, but I think you're going to get high level play when he's on, and when he's not, you're going to have some potential issues. But we'll see how ready they get him and how reliant they are on him early. It sounds like they gave he and Byron Turner a lot of reps in the first scrimmage. There you see him there. I mean, he's just got to turn it loose. He kind of gets stuck here. It's like, just go, my man, go, get off and go.
But he's got the good instincts. He's working back. You can see he's got an athletic frame.
The frame and the athleticism are there. Like it's just his football instincts, his football IQ, like all that's just got to come, and it's just going to come with more time and more reps and more
It's processing speed, right? Like I think he moves pretty well. It's just getting more reps out there on the field. Like that's a good. He moves laterally pretty well. I think it's kind of interesting watching him shuffle along the line.
He's 5, right?
He's 8, so he's
on the left
side of the screen here.
All right.
So he kind of glides in.
Yep.
He gets swallowed up a little bit, but he pops out and makes the tackle.
He kind of stays too laterally there. Like he didn't take the guard on, or the puller on wrong shoulder, and it was.
I mean, let's be real. This dude started on a team that beat Clemson fair and square.
And he was a big part of that game. I mean, he played a big role in that win.
And now he's your third defensive end coming off, and depending on how much run you're going to put Braden Fiske out there, he might be your fourth.
Right.
And he's still a guy that he moves well. I think you see a lot out of him.
I think he's comfortable with the length and the athleticism to kind of keep everything in front of him. The next step is going to be going forward and applying more pressure on the offensive linemen.
Yeah, I mean, your number 3 defensive end is a guy that played 400+ snaps in the SEC last year and started for a South Carolina team that beat Clemson.
That's good context.
Like Kevin just said, yeah. I mean, that's not bad. There's not a lot.
Well,
there's not a lot of dudes that are rolling that out there.
Imagine this kid against that bowl game at Oklahoma when they were. And I love Leonard Warner, and he was out of position that game. But they were just taking advantage of us on those jet sweeps and run to the outside. Imagine a kid like that moving laterally, dude. You help shut that game down. And
this dude's got some freak show arms. Like he is long.
Yeah, I mean, you see it. People don't really stick to him because he's always making these backside plays. It's just you need to clean up some tackling stuff.
Yep. He doesn't have a lot of pass rush moves. Like that's not his strength.
He's with a good coach for that. Say what you will about Tzatziki John, but he's a good developer, man. I like him.
He doesn't.
Yeah, I wish Kentucky threw the ball more than once a game. Be nice to see his pass rush moves. All right, that's not really on him.
Nope. Played squirts inside.
All right, here he is at the bottom of the screen again, and Kentucky keeps jumping offsides.
That's a good point. They're scared of him. That's the fear of Gilbert.
He's clearing the backside here. Pursuing.
Oh, get him. Oh, no, he got you. No, he could have the mega sack.
Take it all back.
We were so excited.
Oh,
I got to watch that again.
I want the juke.
He's doing a really good job of keeping his hips, trying to cut him off and turn him back, see how much more help is here than out here.
He kind of shuffles like a basketball player. I wonder if he can play basketball in high school.
He was a big time. He played. That's what he was before he.
I didn't know that, but yeah, you can totally see it in the way he moves. It's interesting movement compared to the movement that we saw at like Fiske on the outside or something. I know 2 totally different body types, but
that's a pretty good jump right there. That's not bad.
Ben. He just kind of can't clear this tackle. Like the tackle's on his hip. See that? I mean, like he didn't win that. Like it. I think because he gets by and runs the quarterback up the field, you think it's a win, but he can't quite clear the tackle here.
To be fair, if this defensive tackle's feet weren't in cement, then he might have a chance.
Oh yeah, big boy's not. Yeah.
And that might be a hole by the offensive tackle too.
Yeah, it's hard to know because I mean it's not a bad first step. I think there's something to work with. I think he's going to be someone that you feel comfortable playing with, and I do think he looks better in practice than he does right here.
Oh, that's good.
So you've seen the kind of upward trajectory even from this film where we think he's having a pretty solid game, especially in context with what his role is going to be at FSU.
I think he's a really solid player. I would say that I'm not as worried about the defensive end room as we might have been in the spring. Byron Turner is another name that's kind of popped up.
Yep.
Who's having a really good fall camp. He's an athletic dude. He's got the athletic tools. I think he's a guy that's had some injuries and so I think he's finally had a healthy spell where he can start working on this stuff. And I think him and Edmond can be a solid defensive end room for you. I don't know what the top end talent is out of those two, but I think as guys that rotate in and can give some breathers to Verse and Patrick Payton, they're guys that I'm feeling more comfortable with as the season gets closer.
Any other names on the
Yeah.
defensive? Oh, go ahead, Adam. I was
Yeah,
going to say
well, I
anybody we
think-
didn't cover, or
No, you're going other names. I mean, I think Jaden Jones is a guy worth mentioning towards the second half of the year. I mean, he had an ACL in his JUCO last year, and he's a guy that the staff really likes and thinks that his best football's in front of him. And I think it's worth mentioning Dante Anderson.
Yeah, for sure.
The walk on came in with Daniel Lyons, their buddies, and he's kind of reshaped his body. He has some juice. Just kind of his frame was always kind of weird, and I think people didn't necessarily they didn't see the upside there for him frame wise.
Evaluators did a 4-star walk on. That's pretty rare.
But coaches didn't seem to. It didn't
Yep.
seem to be crazily recruited. Maybe that's because his plan all along was to go wherever Daniel Lyons went out. I'm not sure, but I think he's a guy worth mentioning as a pass rusher. In some of these games that maybe are going to be blowouts, it'd be interesting to see him get in there and get some reps and kind of see what he can do. But I think you're 4 there, and then you talk about a Fiske, maybe a Briggs sliding out if you need him to again. But I think they want to leave him inside as much as possible. And then maybe a Daniel Lyons, who we didn't talk about as much with the D tackle group, but we didn't mention him. Those are guys with length and quickness that you could see maybe in some heavier packages out on the edge. I think ultimately the story for this defensive line group is, does Adam Fuller get creative finally? Is he able to do more stuff with this group to create matchups, to get negative plays out of his defense, and hopefully force takeaways, not turnovers, takeaways, because he'll be in our YouTube comments yelling at us if we don't call them takeaways.
Yeah, dude. Zone lover 6969. Yeah. So I think if you don't do it this year, you're never going to do it at Florida State,
Right.
because you have the variety of skill sets. You have the variety of body types. You have the variety of attributes, the things that they excel at and they don't. You can create the way that Mike Norvell likes to mix it up as far as his offensive philosophy. He likes to play matchups on offense. And just when you think they're going to do something, they do another play built off of that as tendency breakers. Dude, I loved Adam Fuller's and his film at Florida State. He has been really constrained by injury and the roster that they've had up until this point. And we've talked about that. We've belabored it. There's things that he's done good. There's things that we thought he could improve on. Whatever,
Agreed.
dude. Go back and watch our 9 million videos. But when he was the defensive coordinator at Memphis, he took a defense that was coached by the current head coach of Oregon and Dan Lanning and made them demonstrably better in every statistical category. And he did it in very inventive, interesting, sneaky ways, as far as illusion, subterfuge, changing things pre and post snap, confusing the crap out of some really good offenses in the AAC at a school that is not known really ever for playing defense. I want that Adam Fuller back, and he can do that on the defensive line, I think, with the rotation and the diversity of bodies and skill sets that he's got. I'm excited about it. If we had to grade FSU's 2022 defensive line last year, I don't know, out of 10, or if you want to do the not bad, not good, average, good, very good, great. I mean, Adam, what do you think that they played last year, and what do you think the potential is for this year? Because we agree that they're going to be a better unit, right?
Last year.
You don't think they're going to be better this year than last year? They have everybody else. Okay.
I'm not saying that.
Because you're taking a pause there. I was about to have.
I'm thinking
he's trying to grade last year.
Yeah, how I would grade last year. I mean, I think if I had to grade last year, I think you got to talk about a 4.
So you'd have them to average to
they were dog meat last year.
Okay,
they did not
fully
play
healthy
well
against LSU. What at full strength? I'm with you as far as the totality of
fully
the
healthy against
performance.
LSU. That LSU all offensive line was pretty bad at the beginning of the year. I mean, I would say fully healthy against LSU, they were 6.5, 7, somewhere in that ballpark.
So still average plus.
Yeah. I mean, you were talking about a Jared Jackson. I love Big Coop, but I mean, he was limited, and then he got hurt too. And they were just so beat up last year on the interior. They just got demolished in run game. I think I'm probably at a pretty solid 4 for last year.
Okay. What about this year?
Maybe a 5 this year. I mean, if Fabian's definitely healthy and you're going to get the maximum number of snaps you can get from him, knowing that blowouts, they're going to take him out of the game,
Mhm.
you know, that kind of stuff. Maybe in some of these games that they don't feel like they need him, they're going to, you know, limit his snaps, try to maximize him against the Clemsons, the Floridas, the Miamis, and the LSUs of the world. Malcolm Ray was probably your number 3 defensive tackle last year, and number 2 when Fabien was hurt. And now you're talking about him maybe being your number 6.
That's crazy.
Or
That
number 5.
infusion of like development and new
Yeah.
players, and it's a whole new world. Yeah.
It's hard for me to say. I mean, and we just talked about that your number 3 defensive end is a guy that played 400 plus snaps in the SEC last year. I think you got to go with like a solid 8. I don't think I can go 9 or 10 because I don't know how high the ceiling is for an Edmund this year or a Byron Turner this year, or is Dennis Briggs back to where he was 2 years ago? If he is, then yeah, I'm probably at a 9. But I think I'm probably at a solid 8 for this year.
I like that. And to be honest, like all those guys like Edmund and Turner and some of those people like Lyons, we don't know their ceiling. Man, we don't know what the ceiling of even a Jared Verse or a Pat Payton are with competent interior pass rush. Like we saw how good they were lining up in those same 4 positions, not having a lot of variation, just saying, "Hey boys, beat them off the edge with your talent." You start to instill some confusion in those tackles they're going up against. You start to create some interior pressure. We haven't even scratched the surface of their production. Kev, same question to you I asked Adam, kind of like synopsis of last year, and then what do you think we could be this year?
Well, I think you have to take into consideration that FSU really leaned on their defensive tackles to win them football games. They stayed too high a lot. They said, no one's going to throw the football on us. You've got to run the ball against us if you want to win. And I think fully healthy, they were able to do that for the most part. But the problem is once Fabo went out, that stack of cards came down. And I think we trusted the defensive line, and I think they trusted the defensive line. And I honestly think it made them look worse than they might have actually been. But that context also is probably going to be carried into this year, where they're probably going to try to do the same thing. They're probably going to try to keep 2 safeties back and try to shut down the pass, because that's what Iowa's doing. That's what Georgia's doing. That's what Alabama's doing. That's what all the great defenses are doing. They're saying, you're not going to be able to throw the football on us. We're going to trust our defensive line to win. And if your defensive line wins, like we saw them win against Syracuse and Georgia Tech and Miami, then you're going to feast, and the other team is not going to be able to move the football. But if your defensive line doesn't win, the Oklahomas, the Floridas, the LSUs sometimes, then you're going to give up more points. So I think that the defensive line might be better than what we're anticipating, but they're going to be asked to do a lot. And so I'm a little bit worried about, what you have after Fabien Lovett and Braden Fiske on the interior. I think there's a lot of talent there. I think in particular, Daniel Lyons is someone that could step up and be someone by the end of the year. You're talking about being a really, really good defensive tackle. But I need to see it. And unfortunately, the toughest games are going to be the earliest games. So last year I'd give him a 5 or 6. This year I'd give him an 8. I think AB's right on with an 8. In order to give him a 9, I'd have to know that Daniel Lyons is the guy that I think he's going to be, or Josh Farmer is the guy that other people talk about him being.
Right. The what ifs need to actually hit, but you're talking about like elite level units. I'm with you, and I think that was a good point. We asked that
AB's
defense.
got something to say.
I know. Just
I
go
thought
ahead
for
and
sure
get it out.
I thought for sure Kev was going to be like a 6 or something. He has been Dr. Doom over the freaking defensive line since Darrell Jackson didn't get the waiver.
It's been tough. The group chat's been very morose.
It's been no one responding as I.
Oh, Kev's been melting down.
Tears.
Kev has been melting down.
He's been very goth lately, just ironing his hair, like eyeliner, listening to like My Chemical Romance. I mean, MCR, I love that.
Oh man, I'm telling you, if you had an offensive line where you're transitioning out Fabien Lovett and Darrell Jackson with Braden Fiske and Jared Verse, I mean that's
it's a 9.5 for sure. I mean, the only thing you're missing is a surefire, like elite pass rusher coming off the bench behind the two really good pass rushers, elite level pass rushers you've already got.
I'm with you. And I think to your point, Kev, I thought that was a very salient point. We asked a thin defensive line to do a lot because we were trying to call a defense to protect the secondary. I think it's going to be different this year. I think he's going to get a lot more creative. Reports out of camp have been the cornerbacks have been dynamite. The safeties have been better than we thought. Better depth there. Guys are integrating well. Better coaching with Pat Surtain. Fins up. I don't know. I think it'll be not quite the opposite. I think we're going to start the year off asking the defensive line to win the game and play the too high behind it. But we're going to do some fun stuff back there that's going to help them out too. With I think, who knows, zone blitzes, corner blitzes, a lot of stuff like that. I think it's going to be more fun to watch, and I think the unit's going to perform much better than last year. I'm with you guys. I go 5 last year, 8 this year. With if some of those dudes hit, it could still, even without Darrell Jackson, I think it could be a really elite unit, particularly rushing the passer. Whew. What a preview, what a unit, what a squad. That's right. Best film review in the business for the best website in the business, Noles 24/7. As always, we're not done. We got the rest of the defense to do for our position preview. Subscribe to the channel, Noles 24/7 YouTube, just churning out content every day. Subscribe, notifications on. If you're not a member of Noles 24/7, there is time to repent for your blasphemy because the season is slowly approaching on us. And boys, that's when we're our best. So don't miss it. Stay with us. We love you. It's almost football time. I feel a chill in the air up in Iowa. Keep chopping.